Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we are watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 1, Episode 13, The Storyteller. This episode aired May 2nd, 1993.
And I have no memory of ever seeing this episode.
Before we jump into this one, do you want to talk about anything from the previous podcast? Anything we might need to correct?
Nope, it was perfect.
I'm going to go with perfect too because I haven't listened to it yet. If I find anything that's not perfect, I'll come back and add something here. Okay. The show opens with Sisko giving a station log on stardate 46729.1 and a shot from under the space station. Kind of unique. Usually we get the straight-on shot or the top view.
Always happy to see shots of the space station.
He says the Bajoran government, and he didn't say provisional government, so you can't drink. That was disappointing.
Well, they've now moved past the provisional, and now they actually have a full, proper government.
Is that true, or are you making that up?
I'm making the assumption.
Oh, because we haven't said that. Anyway, he's saying that the Bajoran government has asked him to mediate a land dispute between two rival factions on Bajor, the Paku and the Navat, to try and avoid a civil war. Then we open in Ops. Sisko comes down the steps of his office. Kira says the Paku delegation has arrived. Dax says the Navat should be here within the hour as well. Take a good look at Dax, because I don't think you ever see her again in this episode. She disappears. Miles, sleeves rolled up, tries to get out of a mission to Bajor. He asks Sisko if Ensign Boyer might replace him on the mission because it requires little more than a chauffeur. Sisko wonders if something has come up that needs his attention, but Miles says that the station is running smoothly for a change. Just then, in comes Bashir with his sunny disposition, and we immediately understand why Miles wants out of the mission, as Bashir says, "Oh, Chief, all set to go?"
He's just trying to avoid going on a trip with Bashir.
"Yes, sir," Miles says, kind of making a face, which Sisko notices. I guess I didn't realize that Bashir outranked Miles, but okay. Trying to get the answer to that question led me down a whole rabbit hole on Google of explanations around enlisted non-commissioned officers. So I decided, okay, fine, I'll just go with it. Bashir asks Sisko if the magistrate of the village they're going to gave any indication of the nature of the medical emergency. Sisko says only that his village is in danger of extinction.
Sounds grim.
Yeah, medical emergency and extinction, and he's all bright and sunny, and Miles is trying to get out of it, and nobody's rushing. I mean, it's just, the show can be so weird sometimes.
Bashir's kind of cavalier attitude, he takes these things very lightly when maybe he shouldn't be.
Yeah. Sisko kind of ignores O'Brien's plea. I think he sees right through it.
Yep.
And he heads out with Kira, gets in the elevator to head off to his thing. Bashir says he's really looking forward to this mission as it gives him and Miles the chance to get to know each other better. And I think that's precisely why Miles isn't excited.
Yeah, Miles gives this look as Bashir goes through the door.
Yeah, he's not hiding his disdain at all.
Quick leadership question here. Should Sisko have addressed the obvious animosity between Bashir and Miles at this point?
No. This is where we need the leadership podcast sound. No, he certainly shouldn't do it in front of others as he's in this open office, right? There's a bunch of people there.
Yeah.
Well, I think to some degree, it probably falls on Sisko to have a conversation with Miles about being respectful and learning to work with him, and also not showing open disdain for Bashir, because that then undermines the respect that other people might have for the Doctor, and I don't think you really want to allow that to continue.
Yeah. I mean, he's cut Bashir off. He has been very openly disrespectful. He
probably should have spoken to him about it already.
Yeah.
And told him that, hey, I see this. Everybody else sees this. Maybe you want to alter your behavior a little bit. And maybe he would work to show Miles the accomplishments that Bashir has had and the value.
Yeah.
And then to try to see him as a human being and find the human being under there that maybe you're not connecting to. And if you can't do that, then you at the very least have to find a way to just show respect so that other people will follow.
Get on with it, Miles. Not the time to complain.
In the elevator, Sisko is asking Kira to set up an informal session with the two factions today. She says just getting them at the same table will be an accomplishment. She also says there's an old saying on Bajor, the land and the people are one. Well, the land inhabited by these people is the harshest on the planet. So I guess they're going to be harsh? Or that's her thought, is that they're going to be harsh?
Yeah, I assume that what she's meaning there is that these are tough people, that they are not easily swayed, and that they have very strong opinions.
Well, that would make sense. Sisko's pretty confident that everything will be okay, as he's done things like this before, and he has Kira at the table to help.
Baseball reference here as well. Not his first time at the plate.
Then he asks about the Paku Tetrak, which I guess is the person in charge. Looking up the word Tetrak indicated that it's the governor of one of 4 divisions of a country or province, so one of 4 joint rulers.
Ah.
But we only have 2 factions and 2 rulers in this episode, so maybe there are 2 more, the North and the South, because these 2 seem to be the East and the West.
Right.
Kira says she doesn't know much about the Tetrak because they choose to avoid contact with outsiders. The airlock door opens, and there's a man standing there, but he steps aside, allowing a young girl to step into the doorway. She says she is Varys Sewell, Tetrak of the Paku. This is a surprise. Kira and Sisko look at each other, shocked. I guess when Kira said she didn't know much about the Tetrak, she actually didn't know anything at all, because the girl was a surprise. And then we cue the theme song.
We've just got to the opening, and there's a few things I feel I can bring up already. I liked Sisko in the elevator telling Kira that, look, he's done this kind of thing before. And then he's demonstrating that, look, he doesn't know everything. I have you there as my backup. You're my right hand in this thing. Also, this opening provides some more information on Bajor, which it appears is still highly factional. If they have these various provinces that are in disputes, gives us this insight into Bajor now that the invaders are gone isn't exactly unified.
Yeah.
On top of that, I also find telling that Sisko is the one doing the mediation. They're not bringing in a specialist from outside, as we've seen this in The Next Generation, where the Enterprise has been on a mission to go somewhere, and they've brought a Federation mediator with them.
But they're also out in the boonies,
Yeah.
and they give the impression that it takes a long time for anyone to get there. So Sisko is their nearest Federation representative, and I think they want to show confidence in the Federation.
Interesting.
And because they're trying to be a part of it. So I think it's politically a logical thing for them to do, especially since he has experience.
Yes, I think that's true.
So he says.
He must have experience in doing this, and they have confidence in his abilities. Because part of this is they want to bring Bajor into the Federation.
Right.
So I don't think you would have someone who wasn't fully qualified to do this, trying to mediate a situation which could lead to a Bajoran war.
Right. On the shuttle with Bashir and Miles, there is an awkward silence, of course. Bashir asks for an honest answer, and then he says, "Do I annoy you?" "Yes, that's my honest answer. You do annoy me." Every episode, Bashir annoys me. But Miles says, "What sort of question is that?" It's an annoying question that someone annoying would ask. Bashir says, "We've spent 2 hours alone together on this runabout and you haven't said anything." Miles says, "Well, maybe it's because I'm too busy thinking." And Julian says, now he's all excited, "What are you thinking about?" More annoying questions. Oh, he's so annoying.
He is like the annoying little brother.
It's like he's trying to make it all about himself. I think that's what makes him annoying.
Oh.
Miles is really making faces this whole time because Julian is behind him and can't see his face.
Yes.
He said, "I was thinking when we get back to the station, I'll have to run a level 1 diagnostic on the phase coil generators. Satisfied?" And Julian is like, "Fine." Bashir says the chief's opinion means a lot to him and he knows he has a tendency to run off at the mouth. Then he babbles on some more, annoying Miles more.
Being exactly the thing that clearly Miles does not like.
Yes. And then Miles calls him Sir, and Bashir says it's not necessary to call me Sir, maybe just call me Julian. He asks if it's an order, and he has this look on his face like it's the most distasteful thing he's ever heard.
Yes.
Julian says no, but I'd prefer it. All right, Miles says, clearly uncomfortable.
Surely he could call him Doctor, would be another alternative.
That's a good idea. I would think Doctor would be easy. Sisko calls him that for the most part. When they reach stable orbit around Bajor, Miles says they can beam down anytime. And when he calls him Julian, it's like he can't quite get it out. That's pretty funny.
Yes.
And then I thought, I'm always confused about why they sometimes land a shuttle and sometimes they leave it in orbit. So they're leaving the shuttle in orbit empty. It seems risky. Someone could just beam in there and steal it.
It depends whether they have the model budget to land it or not.
No, it's always about money. Anyway, they beam into a settlement, into what looks like a target or a spider's web pattern on the ground. And Julian whips out his tricorder. No sign of any airborne infections. I feel that you should have either, 1, checked that before you beamed down, or 2, turned up in a hazmat suit if you were concerned there was an airborne infection. Very cavalier.
Bad news, Miles. Apparently there is a serious pathogen in the environment, and we've all got 24 hours.
And why would you do that? He says the air, the soil, and the water are all clear.
Yeah.
Then Farron Kaig, the village magistrate, rushes up. This is again another well-known character actor with over 100 credits in IMDb. I, of course, recognize him as Reverend Skinner from Gilmore Girls.
Of course you do.
Anyway, He is a bit frantic and he says the village is in great jeopardy. I only hope you're not too late. And again, why are we moving so slowly then? Why is everybody so cavalier about everything? He rushes away from them up some stairs and they follow. They enter the room with an old guy in a bed looking ill and another guy tending to him. Julian gets out his tricorder asking how many others are sick. None, the guy says. If he dies, we all die. Well, that's not good news.
Yeah. Are you some kind of cult?
Yeah, it's weird. Back on the station, the guy representing the Navat is stuffing his face, saying the Cardassian replicators make a fine lairish pie. Varys, the Tetrak for the other faction, is pacing around behind him, saying she didn't come here to eat. Sisko says, well then, let's talk. Sit down. This is an informal meeting to see where we stand before the official talks start.
Sisko is in charming mode here.
Yes.
Let's be friendly. Let's be nice.
That's pretty smart. Having the meeting before the meeting is usually a very smart thing to do as a leader.
Yeah.
Then he talks about the treaty, saying that the two factions have had this treaty for 90 years, and it defines the border between their lands as following the Glirhan River. During the occupation, the Cardassians diverted the river for use in their mining operations, and now the river flows 20 kilometers west of its former position. That sounds like something the Cardassians would do.
Oh, yeah.
Probably some strip mining. They took all of the resources and left. And
well, that's what they talk about, that the Cardassians were exploiting Bajor for its natural resources.
Right.
And I assume that's also without any care for the environment or for the native population.
Oh, for sure. Now the argument starts that the Paku claim the new land and the Navat say it's stolen. Then he patronizes the girl by saying, if your father was alive, he'd give us back our land. And she says, my father would do no such thing. She says she won't be pressured into betraying her people.
Oh dear, they used the your father card on her already.
Yeah.
Not a good sign.
She's already a little testy and sensitive, I would say. Then in comes Quark with a tray of drinks for everyone, and when he gives the girl her bubble juice, he calls her little lady, and she loses it. She throws the bubble juice in his face and storms out. Quark says he's still charging her for that drink. Which seems right.
You gotta have some empathy for the poor woman. She's just had the your father and little lady thrown at her in one conversation.
I don't think she's old enough to be called a woman. She's a teenager. She's quite young. But I agree with you, and I think she's already sensitive to this because she is a teenager, so she's feeling insecure in the role, and she knows her father was great at the job. We find out a little bit more about that later.
Yeah.
But then having somebody where you already think that this other person is patronizing you, and then Quark comes in like an idiot and calls her a little lady, and that was just like, bah! And she runs out. I think Quark is probably quite used to people throwing drinks in his face and then storming out, especially females.
I do like Quark being 100% true to form.
Yeah.
I'm charging her for that drink. Kira was trying to be positive throughout this scene as well.
Now we're on the promenade, and my notes say that two Jedi walk by. Did you see these guys?
I did not.
With the giant, tails on their heads or head tentacles.
Uh-huh.
I looked it up on Memory Alpha, and apparently we see these guys, or at least one of them, in Emissary as well. I don't quite remember that. But they don't seem to have an official backstory or a name, which is too bad. So I'm just going to call them Jedi, because that's what they look like.
But did they have robes?
No, they didn't have robes.
Yeah, they look like Twi'lek.
It wasn't easy finding them on Memory Alpha, because they don't have a backstory or name, but I found them. Anyway, watching from their perch on the second floor are Nog and Jake. Nog throws something from a little bag at one of the Jedi, and then he giggles as they look up at him. Jake grabs the bag and complains that they've been sitting here for over an hour and he wants to go play baseball on the holosuite. Nog says baseball is slow and boring and even humans stopped playing hundreds of years ago. And I'm just like, aw, it probably ended during a pandemic. That's the only thing I could think of.
Bad news for baseball fans if people stop playing it. And I think as well, you realize here that Nog is just a troublemaker. If he wasn't on the promenade throwing stuff, you know he'd be trolling on Twitter.
Yeah, he's a pain in the butt. Odo comes up behind them saying he told them to stop dangling over the promenade. Jake says they're not going to fall, and Nog says they get a better view from there. So Odo asks what's so interesting that they're trying to look at, and Jake says nothing. So Odo says, well, you can see nothing while standing too, and he makes them stand up. And then after Odo leaves, Nog immediately sits back down. He's such a pain.
Oh, that should be a new name for him. Odo the Killjoy.
Yeah, he really is. What does he care if they're sitting there? Jake says, are you coming to the holosuite or not? We can have Buck Buckeye hit a few out to us. He was the greatest hitter of all time. I assume we're setting that up for something later. But Nog is distracted by the Tetrak girl, who is stomping through the promenade after storming out of her other meeting with throwing the drink in Quark's face. I have to meet her, Nog says, climbing to his feet. Jake rolls his eyes and then follows Nog. Following Nog is something that Jake does a lot.
Yeah, Jake has this great look of, I just want to play baseball.
Yes, he does not seem quite as excited by the girl as Nog. Down on Bajor, Bashir is standing over the sick guy, who suddenly sits up asking for the time, and he wants to get up. His little minder guy, whose name is Hovath, is there, but he's not saying much. Bashir says he's in no condition to go anywhere, and then the old guy asks if the prophet sent him, and he grabs Julian's hand. But then he says, "Oh no, there's something wrong. It must be your companion." So Julian calls Miles over, and he takes Miles' hand, and then he says, "Oh, I knew the prophets wouldn't fail us. You may leave now," he says, which is like, okay. And Julian says to keep him in bed, and then they leave. Outside, the village magistrate asks how the old guy is doing, and Julian says, not good. He's suffering from systemic organ failure. Basically, he's old and dying. Farron, that's the magistrate, says we need him because the Dal'Rok will be here soon. Sounds like something from Lord of the Rings.
It does, doesn't it?
Not good. He says it's a terrible creature that lives in the woods. Every year at the end of the harvest, it appears for 5 nights. Tonight will be the 4th, and only the Sirah, who's the old guy, is strong enough to defeat it. Well, he's not even strong enough to get out of bed, Julian says. If that's true, the village will be destroyed tonight.
Start running, people.
And then music swells into the ad break. So dramatic. Back on the station, Nog and Jake have arrived at the Tetrak's quarters. Nog tries to convince Jake to ring the bell, but Jake is like, "You're the one who wants to meet her," and then they get into a scuffle. It's like you can't even ring the doorbell.
Yeah.
Nog is wearing a very purple sweater, by the way. You're going to point out Morn, I'm going to point out purple.
That's completely valid.
So while they're kind of struggling with each other, the girl opens the door. Nog is too tongue-tied to even remember his name. So Jake says who they are, and then they just walk into her quarters, and Jake sits down, saying they're the unofficial welcoming committee, and he puts his feet up on the table. It's like so casual. And then Nog also comes in and sits down.
I found this very funny. I thought it was very real. I think the writers have really managed to capture pretty nicely the awkwardness of being that age.
How old is Nog supposed to be? Because Sisko keeps saying he's older than Jake. He's a lot shorter, just, physically, but that doesn't mean anything.
I thought Sisko said earlier that Nog was a couple of years older than him.
So maybe he's 16? Okay. But he's so immature, but I guess he's a boy.
Oh, yeah, they seem a little bit younger.
Yeah, but also they're this is the first time either one of them has had a close friend, and so it would make sense that they would be socially kind of awkward and stunted, I guess.
Yeah, I do like the way this is written.
Yeah, no, it's good. Jake asks if she wants a tour of the station and to see the wormhole. And Nog is like, "Oh, good idea, Jake." And the girl says she would like to see the wormhole.
This scene is just hilarious.
It is. The girl says she would like to see the wormhole, and she's not busy right now, so off they go.
Now, is it just me, or does Jake actually seem to have put on a growth spurt here? He seems a fair bit taller.
I agree. He does seem taller.
I remember if you watch the show, you do really see him grow a lot.
Sure, the show was on for 7 years.
Yeah.
And he's in the age where he's going to grow.
Nog is wonderfully useless in this situation as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just so sort of tongue-tied.
He's so nervous and he doesn't know what to say. And he's pretty funny.
I do like the way that she goes with them to see the wormhole.
Kids playing together.
It was sort of an interesting take on, this is someone, a very young woman who's been put into a role of leadership.
Yeah.
And probably has had to skip anything even approaching a normal childhood.
I thought it was funny that she had no minder.
Yeah.
Or, no kind of guardian or anything.
Yeah.
It was sort of interesting.
Yeah, you would wonder about kidnapping or if there's enough rivalry between these two factions, she could be a target for assassination or kidnapping.
Maybe she had one, because at the beginning there was that guy who stood in front of her in the airlock, but maybe he dropped her off in her quarters and then he went to his quarters.
Or maybe there are guards or there's security on the corridor that she's in, but
That's
it's
possible.
Jake and Nog, so they're known people on the station.
Yeah, they're not armed. Back down on Bajor, the Sirah is coming down the stairs as the sun is setting. Julian is pointlessly telling him to go back inside, but the old guy says he's in the hand of the prophets now. They climb up a rock as the wind is really picking up. Miles is checking his tricorder, trying to figure out what's going on, and the guy's red robes are super impressive, I thought, at this point, and he's like holding his arms out, and they're very bright and ornate.
Yeah.
Miles says he's not registering any atmospheric disturbance, even though it seems like a storm is brewing. The old guy is saying to everybody in the village there that the Dalrock wakes and we are ready. The crowd is shouting and the wind is blowing. And then he starts reciting something like an old fairy tale or legend of the monster.
Yeah.
Up in the sky, a thick white cloud starts forming and everyone is shouting and pointing. The tricorder isn't picking anything up, even a holographic image power source.
Yeah, but there's still shaking and lightning and the cloud's getting bigger.
Yes, it's very dramatic. And the guy with the robes and his arms out and the big thing behind him. Yeah, it was very dramatic and colorful.
Now, was it just me or were you getting the vibe, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore?
Oh, no, I didn't get that. None of the things that he said are parallel. The story's not parallel.
It doesn't have to. I just got the vibe from it.
Okay, all right.
Network, by the way, is a fantastic movie which predicted, or it was a template for the modern news media.
I feel like you're just going to find ways to bring your favorite things into this, whether it makes sense or not. I think you're going to bring in First Contact. You're going to bring in Network. The Third Man will be next.
Have you just noticed that?
Apparently so. I'm not sure I understand the parallel. The story doesn't line up. Plus, that guy's kind of crazy and he's about to kill himself, and this guy is not like that.
Well, in Network, he was the prophet of the airwaves.
Oh my God. I'm just gonna keep going. The old guy keeps reciting his silly story. The Dalrock's anger is like a wave, blah, blah, blah. The cloud gets bigger, the wind is heavier, and now it's sort of lightning. And the old guy is saying the village is stronger than the Dalrock can imagine, and the villagers are all shouting and looking at the sky. A light seems to be going from the villagers up into the cloud, but then the old guy drops to the ground, and the cloud starts shooting at the village. It seems like maybe someone could have looked into the dangers of sending Bashir and Miles into this place unarmed, because they are not prepared for this.
Yeah, there's like the tendrils of the cloud are coming down from the sky and hitting things.
Very dramatic. Things are kind of blowing up and
I like how in this scene, if you watch, Miles finds a nice safe spot. He like backs up against a building and he's like using his tricorder. I'm speculating here that he knows this is the best thing to do to find cover. He's been on the Enterprise, so I'm expecting he's seen a few red shirts go down over the years.
Sure.
Something strange is happening. Yeah, don't stand there and get zapped by it. Find somewhere safe.
Bloody hell, Miles shouts. It's like he's got to get that in nearly every episode that he's in. The clouds keep firing at the villagers, and the old guy calls for his successor, the one that the prophet sent. He grabs Miles' hand and says, "Yes, you." And he says, "Say what I say, and the village will be saved." So the Sirah starts whispering things into Miles' ear, and then Miles starts shouting that the village shall not be destroyed despite our fears. And the crowd starts coming back and shouting at the cloud. As Miles shouts and the crowd shouts, the light goes back up into the cloud, and the cloud dissipates. And the crowd cheers, and then the old guy drops dead. Uh-oh, Miles, you have a new job.
The Dalrock is defeated.
The village magistrate says the Sirah has left us, but a new Sirah was sent by the prophets. And then he grabs Miles, who looks pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, he does not seem thrilled at this proposition of becoming the new Sirah.
Definitely not.
I also noticed that Julian does not use his tricorder to ascertain the old Sirah is dead. So once again, we're seeing tricorders are useless when it comes to seeing if people are dead or not.
Yes, but also I think Julian did enough scans that he knew he was on his way out. Back at DS9, we're in Quark's, and Quark is telling Morn a story about selling someone Klingon targs, which were those ugly boar-like creatures that was one of Worf's pets.
Hooray, Morn!
The whole purpose of that line is for Morn to be in the scene. Kira comes in and orders a Star Drifter. Quark pours her some green liquid and asks how the negotiations are going, and she asks for a double. So not well, apparently.
Yeah, she's looking a little downcast at this point.
This isn't a very interesting drink, the Star Drifter, because it's just straight from a bottle and requires no mixing, so I was wondering if it was sort of Midori.
Ugh, gosh, that's horrible.
Now we're in Sisko's office, and Varys is complaining that the Novak guy, whose name is Woban, is an obstinate fool.
What about you, kid? It's like they're cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, well, they probably are. Sisko says he feels like Woban is here to talk and asks what she's here for. She says she's here to protect the interests of her people. And then he says, by starting a war? And she goes all indignant. I object to your tone. This is not how you get something out of a teenager.
Yeah.
If you'd rather fight than talk, then we're wasting our time. She says she's prepared to die for the land, and Sisko is like, well, that's not really what we're here for. And before she can storm out, he asks her if she's sure her people are as ready to die for that land as she is, and she leaves. Sisko is not thrilled.
This is fascinating. This is the second episode we've seen this almost sort of fanatical nationalism or tribalism. Because the last episode we saw, the two races that were fighting.
Oh, yeah.
The writers are clearly on a roll here.
I don't know. It's almost like a simple trope because they don't have visitors coming to the station very frequently. I guess that's my answer. I don't feel like Sisko realizes how to negotiate with a teenager. Maybe he's never had to do a political negotiation with a teenager before. He had kind of the same luck with Jake in that Negus episode.
Oh, yeah. I guess it's a new experience or it's a difficult experience because they've been dealing with professional diplomats.
Right. This would be a new challenge.
Yeah.
It must be a new day now because Jake is wearing purple and blue and Nog is in his orange and mustard outfit from a couple episodes ago. And now they're arguing over who gets the girl. Nog is like, I saw her first, but Jake is like, you can't say more than 2 words to her. It's a very teenage argument. It's pretty funny.
This is also a very teenage male kind of argument. This is stuff I can totally relate to.
I believe it.
Did you see Morn in the background?
No.
Once again, anytime anybody's walking, there seems to be a set instruction that Morn needs to be walking in the background when people are discussing things.
I wonder if they have to do that. They have to get him in a couple scenes in case something gets cut because they wanted to make sure that he was in every episode.
Oh, that's funny because it looks like he's eating a candy apple and he has this like spring in his step. He seems like just a happy guy.
Bizarre. As they climb up to their usual hanging out spot, they find the girl they're talking about. She's sitting there dangling her feet over the edge like they normally do. Jake and Nog immediately join her, and Jake, being the nice kid, asks if something is wrong. She says there are these people who want something I have, and I don't want to give it to them. And then Nog starts asking if they have something she might want in return. He says maybe this isn't a problem, but an opportunity. Ah, very wise for this dumb kid.
I think it's Nog's Ferengi upbringing coming into play here with this is an opportunity.
Yes.
It's also the way in this
handy.
scene, I like how he like lights up when she brings up this thing because it's something he can relate to.
Yeah, something he understands and has been drilled into his head, yeah.
This is very much, I think, a Nog episode as much as anything else. If you see sort of much more of the Nog's personality coming out.
Then Jake says when he has a problem, he asks his dad. He's such a sweet, innocent kid. And Nog says he also asks his dad. And then the girl says, it helps, doesn't it? And Jake says yes. And Nog says no. It's the best.
I laughed out loud at this.
Me too. That was when you came in and asked me what I was laughing about. I'm like, yep, something in this episode. Jake says his dad is pretty smart.
And Nog replies with, my dad's smart too. In his own way.
In his own way. I know, that was so funny.
Burn.
The girl says her parents were killed by the Cardassians, and Jake says he's sorry, and his mom was killed by the Borg. He is so sweet and so cute.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
Well, I think this is good writing as well of how Nog is and how Jake is. It provides a great contrast in the show.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, what I think's funny is the writers, I believe, are trying to do that with O'Brien and Julian.
Trying to show the contrast between two characters?
Yeah, except it's working way better with Jake and Nog than it is with those two.
It really is. Well, yeah, because only Miles is worth watching of those two. Jake asks if there's someone she can talk to that she trusts, but she doesn't really trust anyone. Then Odo comes up behind them and chases them off again, and Odo looks so pleased with himself. Why does it matter if they sit there? He's such a downer.
You notice he smiled at the end.
Yeah, like he just likes picking on them.
I didn't take it at that. I thought if he wasn't smiling about breaking up the party, he was sort of smiling at them having fun.
Oh, I didn't look at that at all. I thought he was smiling that, yet again, he chased them off, and it just made him happy to be the downer. Remember when Quark said something about him spreading misery? Maybe Quark was right. Now we go back to the old guy's quarters, the Syrah. Bashir is wondering what was controlling that cloud thing. Miles is freaking out that it wasn't him, and this is a huge mistake. And Julian in this scene is eating an apple or something, and he's being so annoying. This is a thing, though, that they do, I think, to emphasize when somebody is being annoying in a show, like in a movie or a TV show, that they're talking and biting into something like really loud and crunchy. I've seen this used before. It just seems to be a way to amplify the annoying character traits of whoever is doing it. But Bashir says, hey, maybe you really were sent by the prophets. We don't know, which really irritates Miles. He's like, no, Commander Sisko sent me. But anyway, Miles says that the Dal'Rok is returning again tonight, and he has no idea what to do.
Yeah.
Just then, the magistrate comes in with a bunch of people carrying gifts for the Syrah. Miles says he doesn't want them, but Julian says to bring them in. And they start piling food up on the chairs and on the floor. And then the magistrate presents 3 young girls, and Miles asks how he can help them. And Julian says, I think they're the ones offering services, Chief. Miles is a little horrified, and there's been a serious misunderstanding. He says, I have a wife and a daughter on Deep Space Nine. So the magistrate shoos away the girls and says, well, you should send for your family so they can live here with you. And he's like, no, I don't think so.
Julian seems to be taking some real pleasure in Miles's discomfort here.
Well, if he were really concerned about Miles' opinion of him, like he said in the shuttle, he would be trying to help him instead of being a jerk.
Well, yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah. So Farron says the Syrah chose you. The Dalrock will kill us all. Can't he just come back for 5 nights once a year? He doesn't have to move there, does he?
I'll just put it on my calendar.
Exactly. I'll just fly down 5 nights. It'll be a little vacation.
Yeah.
And I'll go back. People will bring me food.
I'll bring the family.
Farron is like, who will tell the story? And Miles says he'd like to help, but he doesn't know how. And Farron says, may the prophets grant you victory. And he leaves.
Yeah.
Miles says the only way out of this mess is to find out exactly what the Dalrock is and destroy it before it destroys us.
Now, shouldn't that have been their starting point here? Figuring out what it is and then what they can do about it, rather than going through all of this? I guess it makes better drama.
Well, they didn't know what they were getting into. They came into this whole thing without much information, which seems so silly.
Yeah. Do some homework. Read about the village. Find out about what the local customs and traditions are.
Ask Kira. She may have known.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The whole thing was ridiculous.
She's the Bajoran liaison.
Right. We go back to Deep Space Nine, and Sisko is giving a station log that after 2 days of talks with rival factions, they are no closer to finding a solution. In her quarters, Varys is looking at a map of the river when Nog and Jake enter. Today, Jake is in a bright green and blue outfit, while Nog is mustard and orange again. Nog asks if they can help, and Varys asks how she can be sure that an opportunity is worth the risk. Nog says instinct, and then he cites the 9th rule of acquisition, that opportunity plus instinct equals profit. Jake says that doesn't help.
Nog was actually trying to be nice in this scene.
He really was trying to help.
Because he actually had something that he could really relate to.
Yeah, yes.
And I do like the way he lights up when he wants to talk about something he knows something about.
That's true. His eyes kind of sparkle and he gets sort of excited. It's funny that these lessons that he's learned, which are all around profit, and that maybe he hasn't had any opportunity to really implement in his young life.
Yeah.
It's funny that those things are coming in handy for this girl who's just trying to figure out how to lead her people and how to find her way through. And these are things that somehow she hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
It's giving her sort of pragmatic advice, even though that's not really the way the rules are intended to be used.
Nog's giving her the rules, but they can be used in the way that's actually beneficial and not like the Ferengis would use them, which is for personal enrichment.
Yeah, there's really been no evidence of this before this episode, but there's a chance that Nog is the smartest one of all of them.
That's an interesting take.
So even though Nog has given this little piece of advice, Jake says that doesn't help, but Varys says it does help. Nog is so excited, he says we should do something to celebrate. And he said he took one of Quark's security spark plugs out of that drawer that has no security on it that we've seen a few times.
Yes.
And he says we can do something fun like swipe Odo's bucket. That seems like a terrible idea. Don't take Odo's bucket.
I gotta go along with this and say that's actually pretty funny.
Why is that something to do to celebrate?
Nog is kind of a trolly trouble.
He looks like a troll. He acts like a troll. He has these moments where I think maybe he's the smart kid and then he wants to take Odo's bucket. But also a boy thing again, I guess.
Well, yeah, there is also that side of it.
Nog runs off, and the other two follow after him, and Varys is asking Jake, what's so funny about a bucket? So Jake explains that every 16 hours, Odo turns into liquid to regenerate, which I'm with the girl. Why is this funny? What's with the bucket?
I thought it was funny that she actually went along with this.
I think she's just looking for someone, I don't know, to connect to.
Yeah.
And she's finding it in these two kids because they don't want anything from her.
Yeah, I think you're right, that this is different from the people that she would have in her life at this point.
Right, whereas they're just treating her like a kid, which is what she is.
Yeah, let's just go and do something dumb. It'll be fun.
Something dumb.
We are kids.
She should find some girls to hang out with. So Nog uses the security spark plugs to get Odo's door open. This is a terrible idea. Nog asks Jake to guard the door, and he runs off to find the bucket. And Varys asks if this is all right. And I wrote down, no, this is a terrible idea. But Jake tries to rationalize that it's okay because no one's going to get hurt. Everything will be fine. And then Nog comes out with a bucket saying he found it, but then he sort of trips and a bunch of goo flies out of the bucket and hits Jake. And Jake is like, oh no, and he starts scraping off the goo. And Nog is laughing his head off. Clearly, this was all just a bad joke.
Yeah.
Nog says it's oatmeal that he got from the replicator, and Jake is annoyed at first and throws a handful of oatmeal at Nog, but then they all laugh, although Jake's laugh is not very convincing. I'm not sure he was super thrilled with this.
So this was actually Nog pranking Jake.
Yes.
This is totally something you would do as a 14-year-old boy.
Oh, for sure. Odo is not going to be happy to find oatmeal all over his office. And just then, Odo walks in and he says, "That bucket belongs to me."
Busted.
And Nog throws the bucket at Odo and then runs out the door, leaving the other two behind. He's just like such a chicken too. It's just so Ferengi.
That is totally a Ferengi move. And, we learned this from the Nagus episode where Rom and Quark sold out their cousin to authorities.
Oh, right. So Nog doesn't get very far because Sisko happens to be in the hallway and he grabs Nog as he's running away. And Sisko looks at Jake and then at the oatmeal that he got on his hand.
Sisko very much drew the correct conclusion here that a running Ferengi is trouble.
Yeah, you need to grab him. And I just thought, oh, sweet Jake. So gullible, so disappointing.
You're in trouble. I also really like the completely expressionless Sisko here. When he's holding Nog, he is totally flat.
He's just like, okay, I'm sure this kid's up to something. Oh, great. Here's my kid, too. Down on Bajor, Miles is trying to investigate the origin of this monster. He's scanning things that the cloud blew apart. A woman approaches, asking the Syrah to bless her child, and Julian makes a face until Miles puts his hand on the child's head. A bunch more people come looking for favors. Julian tries to hold them back. Also in the background, you see the old guy's little helper dude, Hoveth. He's creeping around in the bushes, keeping an eye on Miles. I don't think the guy has said more than a couple of words, but now we realize he's up to something.
Oh yeah, he's got a frowny face and he's lurking. You just know that is trouble.
In the Syrah's living quarters, Miles is looking around for clues. He's like opening drawers, looking in boxes.
I have an idea here. Why doesn't he try calling Dax? She's clever.
They don't call anybody. They don't tell anybody anything.
Yeah.
They just try to figure it out. Maybe they figure if they called Sisko, he'd be, you guys are smart enough to solve this problem yourselves. Plus, he's busy.
Yes.
But yeah, they could call Dax. Dax has nothing to do in this episode.
Exactly, and she's smart.
So Hoveth comes in, and Miles asks who he is. He says he was the Syrah's apprentice, and Miles asks if the old guy ever revealed any secrets. The guy is clearly a little bitter and not really wanting to help Miles.
Yeah.
And then Miles turns his back on him, and the guy comes at him with a knife, and Miles sees him coming in the mirror, so the guy's not too smart that he's coming right at him in the mirror.
When you see him outside the window, when Miles is like looking at some boxes and things, you see he's got like his hand in his jacket.
Like he's hiding something.
Because I saw that and thought, this is either going to be phasery or stabby. And it looks like he went with stabby.
So Miles is fighting him off, and then Julian comes in, and the two of them are fighting him off together. They manage to throw him off, and Miles holds his knife up in the air, asking why he's trying to kill him. And the guy says, because you're not the true Syrah, I am. And then we go to an ad break. Very melodramatic. So Hoveth, the apprentice dude, says he's been studying with the Syrah for 9 years, and then Miles turns up and takes his place. He thinks the Syrah was punishing him because a few nights ago he'd been unable to control the Dal'Rok, and several people were injured. He shows Miles and Julian a bracelet with a little stone in it, saying the stone is from an orb in the Celestial Temple. It's used to control the Dal'Rok.
Oh.
Many years ago, the village was in chaos, and the Syrah had to find a way to unite the people, so he used the orb fragment to give the fear physical form.
Big reveal.
The villagers don't know that that's how it works. He says the story helps the villagers focus their thoughts and defeat the Dal'Rok together. Then he says if he had another chance, he could do it. And Miles says, well, this is your lucky day. Tonight is your chance. And he puts the robes onto Hoveth. But just then, the village magistrate comes running in saying Hoveth had his chance and he failed. He tells him to take off the robes and he puts them back onto Miles. This is not going how Miles had planned.
Surely Miles, as the new Syrah, can just say, nope, we're going to train this guy. He's going to get the robes. Because the last Syrah just grabbed Miles and said, yeah, he's now the guy.
Yeah, he names a new guy and then he says, K Syrah, Syrah. Were you not waiting for someone to say that the whole episode? Was that just me?
No, I was not. I'm glad you got that in.
Thank you very much. Now we go to DS9. We go back to Sisko's office, and Varys is taking responsibility for Jake and Nog, saying that they were just trying to impress her. She says Jake is a nice boy and so is Nog in his own way.
At this age, she's already got guys totally figured out. Impressive.
Yeah, well, also she's got a tough job, so she's probably pretty smart. She's got some wisdom. She asks Sisko if he ever did something to impress a girl, and that sort of makes Sisko soften to this whole story, and also really to this version of Varys.
Yeah.
She was spending time with Jake and Nog to learn more about the commander and see if he could be trusted. She says Jake speaks very highly of Sisko and really trusts him, and it makes her miss her own parents.
I think this reinforces just how young she is and how much responsibility has been forced on her. She reveals that she's got big shoes to fill and has a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, she says her father was a great leader, and she tries to be strong, but it's difficult.
Yeah.
So Sisko tries to use this opportunity to say that her father knew how to compromise, which I'm not sure how he would know that, but she views it differently. She thinks the Novat feared her father, and they don't fear her, so she's worried that if she compromises, she'll be seen as weak. Which is definitely an immature leader or person type thing in that situation. Like, I have to be tough all the time for people to think that I'm tough.
And I think that's interesting that ties to past prologue, you know, where there was the whole faction of the Bajorans who were unwilling to compromise what they saw as their ideals and wanted to continue to punish the Cardassians.
Right. I think in this scene, if we're going to do the leadership podcast, I would say that sometimes just being honest can make you appear tough. Like, you're the one willing to say something hard or make a hard decision. You don't necessarily have to do the thing that is tough.
Yeah.
Sisko says a great leader like her father is one who is willing to risk saying yes. This is a little bit of clunky dialogue here, but I get his point, and so does Varys. She says she believes she knows of an opportunity for both sides to say yes.
I like the way she said, opportunity.
Yeah, like Nog. It's like, it's about time. We've only got a few minutes left in this episode. You better get your crap together.
Yeah, either start a war or compromise. And I also thought there was an interesting juxtaposition of role reversal here. You had the young person who was very much an intransigent absolutist, and the older man who was the idealist. It's like something that you would usually see as the opposite of the young person being the idealist.
Oh yeah, that's true. The roles were reversed there. So down on the planet, Miles comes out with the robes because the sun is setting, and he asks Hovath why he doesn't just take the job, but he says he can't because the people don't trust him. Miles is like, I don't even know what I'm doing, but he climbs the rock anyway as the storm is starting, and the crowd is shouting, tell the story. Miles looks so confused up there. So he starts saying, once upon a time there was a Dalrock and it lives in the woods.
Miles does not get off to an auspicious start there.
No, he has no idea what he's doing up there, and he's trying to make it look like he has no idea, I think.
Yeah.
The villagers are looking at him confused as the cloud starts to form, and Miles isn't really making anything work.
Yeah, the Delrock's just getting bigger and nothing's happening.
Right. And Hovath says something is wrong, and Julian leans over and says, that's because he's not the Syrah, you are. Julian says maybe the Syrah planned this whole thing so that you would have to rescue Miles and show that you are the true successor. Aha!
Shockingly, Bashir is the one who figured it out.
Well, Miles and Bashir may have figured this out together, but they didn't show it on screen.
Poor Miles, he's doing really badly at
Yeah,
this.
because now the cloud shoots at him and knocks him down. Hovath jumps up and starts telling the story. The crowd begins to form with him, and the lights start shooting toward the cloud again. And Miles says, about time, as if this was the plan all along. And it works. Miles drops the robes and says, let's get out of here.
This was a funny scene. They're all now congratulating the new Syrah, and the two of them are like, run for it.
Run, get out. Back on the station, Sisko is walking with Varys. She says she's going to give the land back to the Novat as long as her people get free trade on both sides of the river. They walk past Jake and Nog, who wish her luck with her meeting, and then she kisses Nog's cheek, and he freezes. But then Odo grabs Jake and Nog from behind, saying they're going to clean the security office until it shines. Because remember, they were throwing oatmeal around in there. I don't think Nog cares that he has to do that. He got the girl's attention.
I did like this premise, and I think it was fascinating that she wasn't necessarily going to learn or take advice from the adults. But coming from someone around her own age, it seemed to make sense, the idea of compromise to her. And I think it was interesting that it was something that Nog really understood.
Yes, and also from someone who didn't want anything from her and wasn't going to gain in any way, shape, or form. So she felt like that was advice she could trust. Yeah, and she was smart enough to take it.
And without any political ramifications, because I would imagine she's also in bad positions of if she takes advice from one side, it alienates one set of advisors or one faction.
Right, exactly.
And then takes it from the other, and you end up in the same position.
But I am worried about those other 2 leaders. I don't know where they are, since she's one of 4 somehow. But anyway, that's just what Google said. It's not necessarily Star Trek.
Yes.
Bashir and Miles now enter. They're back from their mission, and Bashir is saying they've got a great story to tell around the station. And all I could think was, oh, God, he's going to use this to get women, because that's what he does. Miles says he's had enough storytelling. And then he calls him Julian. Like he just can't say Julian. And Bashir says, you don't have to call me that anymore. And Miles says, right you are, sir. Happy to have his passive-aggressive behavior rewarded.
Miles just seems a lot happier at the end calling him sir.
And then the end. Okay. Do you have any overanalysis here that we haven't covered already?
Touching on something that I talked about earlier, and I think this actually was a Bajor episode, is we saw some more information on what Bajor is like, that it is still a highly factional society, leading to internal infighting.
Not very advanced in some places.
Yes, that comes on to my second point, where we see the Bajoran village, where it seems like a very pastoral, a very rural kind of society when you get down to it. So they have technology, they have access to warp drive, there's a high level of sophistication technology-wise, but at the same time you have this very agrarian society, which makes up obviously a significant part of the planet. So it's an interesting juxtaposition between these 2 parts of Bajoran society.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. Yeah. I'm finding it a little difficult to reconcile what interest the Federation has in Bajor. What is it that they're looking for?
I assume it's just to expand the Federation and to offer them a level of protection. I mean, they had been invaded by the Cardassians, so perhaps there's a strategic element to this.
Just another ally.
Yeah.
I was hoping that they were putting Julian and Miles together to try to build on that relationship, try to advance those 2 characters, kind of in the way that they advanced Kira in the last episode. Mm-hmm. But that didn't really happen. I mean, what did I learn about the characters in this episode? Not much.
No.
I learned that Julian is annoying and Miles doesn't like him. I knew that already. Because they didn't even try to solve any problems together in this episode, at least not in front of the camera. I don't know if you're supposed to think that they did something off camera, but they didn't do anything together. So there was no real cooperation or no growth.
That's true. We did not see a lot of that. Although at the end, there was that just closing scene, there was a very small amount of, Miles sort of now tolerating Bashir.
Was he? I don't know.
What I took away from that was Miles wasn't finding Bashir annoying.
That's funny, because I still was. I think we saw a little advancement maybe with Nog, that he was able to gain some confidence from having an idea that helped someone. So I think, maybe there was a little something there.
I think you saw a huge advancement from Nog. I think that Nog was becoming more of a real character and a real person in this one. I liked what they were doing with Nog. I mean, and at the end of the day, Nog did something very un-Ferengi with this. He was actually helping her.
With no gain for himself.
Yeah, with no defined gain. He was not going to make Latinum out of it. He was not going to get the girl. It was completely down to, basically, he was just helping her.
Well, I think he was hoping he was going to get the girl. Don't say it that way.
Well, there was no guarantee of it. And that's, I think, would be the Ferengi thing, of you wouldn't do anything unless you knew there was going to be a payoff.
Right. But there really wasn't much else character advancement at all. Okay, is that it for your overanalysis?
That wraps it up.
All right, well, we can move to women in the future, but there's not much to talk about. Dax had 1 line, so not enough of her. Kira had, 3 or 4 lines, so there really wasn't much of her. Neither character were advanced in any way.
Yeah.
I mean, the great news is nobody creeped on either one of them, so I'll take that. That's a plus. But really, that was kind of it. I don't really want to spend too much time talking about Varys. I mean, essentially, she was just a kid, so I think it's great that she wasn't a stereotype, At first, I thought maybe she was going to be, but she actually came out to be the smartest person in the room, so I guess that was good. But even that didn't really have a lot of depth to it, so not much to say about women in the future in this episode. How about we move on to our rating? Thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs neutral? What is your rating?
I'm giving this a thumbs up. I like the development of Jake and Nog. I like the friendship. I like the way it was written. I thought the whole story worked very well. And I admit I'm kind of a sucker for episodes and stories that have multiple paths running at the same time. And in this one, we had the Julian Miles story.
You like the B story, the A story and the B story.
Yeah, it's just something I like, whether it's in graphic novels or whether it's in TV shows. It's something that just appeals to me.
Although I'm not sure which was the A or the B. They were kind of about the same amount of screen time.
Yeah, I would probably go with the A story being the Miles one just because I'm a Colm Meaney fan.
Yeah. Okay, well, I have to give this a thumbs down.
Really?
I just thought it was awful.
Is it because you've given too many episodes a thumbs up in the last few reviews?
3 in a row.
Yeah.
3 thumbs up in a row. I went back and looked at my list. No, not at all. I actually thought, hey, maybe we're on the upswing and now everything's thumbs up from here. But this episode was too stupid for me. I mean, there was no character development, which is, we've established that is the thing I love. It's the thing I need in order to cling to a show. There was none of that in this episode.
Yeah, they didn't really expand anyone.
Yeah, I mean, they really just showed more ways that Julian can be annoying.
He's eating an apple and being annoying.
There was too much of Julian eating apples. Oh my God, so annoying. And asking if he was annoying. It's like, you know how you can be annoying? Ask if you're annoying. That's annoying. And also, they didn't try to even solve any of the problems together. They didn't show any cooperation or collaboration or any teamwork. So I wasn't excited about that. And the whole thing with the storytelling and the doll rock, it was all so stupid. I just thought all of that was dumb.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's too goofy. And then there was the DS9, the CW show with the girl Jake and Nog. That's not really for me.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't not love Jake. Jake is awesome. But Nog's kind of manic behavior, it's too much for me. It doesn't excite me.
I think they're starting to show him as a different type of Ferengi.
Well, I hope so.
Obviously, the humans and those busybodies in the Federation are interfering with Nog's cultural development.
Right. That's good. But also, it's just, I don't know. You know, I don't like the Ferengi. It's their general behavior and also their teeth. It's hard to watch. Okay. I think that's it for Season 1, Episode 13. Come back next week for Episode 14. In the meantime, if you'd like to tell us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com. We've been getting some great emails. Keep them coming, and we're planning to have a mailbag episode later in the season. You can also tweet us at Rebingeit. Also, check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave us feedback, and you can listen to all of our other awesome podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.